All right, I was scrolling through my comment section while still reeling from a wicked hangover from last night, and I came across this comment from the Internet Complaint Department. The process of turning a sector of industry into Wall Street gambling is called financialization. Financialization. This came from the housing and commercial real estate market in 2006. That's why a $90,000 house from 20 years ago costs 400,000 now. It's also why rent has gone up from $500 a month to $1,500 for the same unit. Logic would dictate that the home prices go down over time. Financialization is the moneyed class attempted to manipulate reality with an Excel spreadsheet. I agree. As a person that's had to live in a studio apartment now for 7 years and watch the rent just skyrocket to a place where at my current salary, I shouldn't be living here. I should be living in a nice house in the suburbs with a big front yard and a nice car. But with the cost of everything going up, I was just watched the Epic Economist who was talking about all these, and I was just watching that, and I'm thinking to myself, I just went shopping at Aldi's for the first time that I can remember. Like the first time, it's just a blur because I just walked in and walked out because it reminded me too much of Trader Joe's. But I walked in there and it's like, you know what? The prices here are actually really low compared to across the street and then across the street again. Like he did a price comparison between what you can buy at Aldi's and even Kroger's is still like 20%, Walmart's 25% more. Whole Foods was like uh, almost 100% more expensive than Aldi's. And everything is getting progressively worse and harder on ordinary people. And you have to wonder why. Why are things like this? Because it's one simple fact that I talk about on this channel all the time. The capitalists think that they deserve all the money. It's the way that they've always thought, it's the way that they treat their labor, it's the way they treat everyone in general. Every corporation in America has the upper class people who make decisions about what the proletariat is going to get when it comes to compensation every single year. And as prices, and I say this all the time, for my wages that I currently make, these are the wages of 20 years ago. This is what people were making 20 years ago in the technology field, and they're offering these wages and telling you to be grateful for these wages while everyone is working a second job or has some sort of other income stream. Because even at my wages, I can't make it on what I get paid from the corporation. And I know that there's a lot of people who I work with that are they're not openly disgruntled because they fear losing their jobs. And I'm going to say this about the employee surveys. They say they're anonymous, right? The how happy are you survey that every corporation sends out. Well, the only people who ever honestly answer those surveys are the people that say things like things will get better or they can't afford to pay us more. That's why they're paying us this amount of money. But it's okay. I can starve and risk becoming homeless because the corporation won't pay me enough to live on. But these are the people that just put their heads down. They're enablers. Every society has enablers. I have a degree in World War II, right? A history of World War II. A lot of bad things were done in society because people decided that they were just going to go along with the status quo. That's how you got people to do terrible things, and people are still doing terrible things. There are hundreds of thousands of homeless people in America right now that need help. But what are we doing with all that extra money that we could be helping the homeless with or helping low income families with? No, we're giving it to other countries to fight wars that we don't even care about. When was the last time you saw anything about the Middle East and how much money America has given to that country in order to continue doing what it's doing. It's no longer in the media. What do we get from the Ukraine? Every once in a while, a snippet of something or something happening over there. Nobody really cares. But there are billions of dollars that have been sent over there that could have been used here in this country across the parking lot from me in my own neighborhood. They could have used some of that money to build housing in a lot that's been empty for 20 plus years, maybe forever. I've never seen anything in this gigantic space right up, 300 yards from where I'm sitting right now. The space is there. There are tons of places that they could knock down right now in order to help regular people out. But guess what? You don't matter, so no one's coming to help you. It's a line that I see in my comment section all the time. Jesus isn't coming to save you. The the Cheeto in chief isn't going to care that you can't afford groceries in the coming year. In fact, this whole episode of Epic Economist was talking about food prices going up and people stockpiling food in the coming year. He's already made it clear who his loyalties are. I mean, he's already said, um, you know, food prices are high, but it's going to be really hard to lower those prices. Inevitably saying, I know that times are hard out there, but unfortunately, I can't do anything about it because it's every single politician who runs a campaign. What did Joe Biden run on 4 years ago? Student loan forgiveness. Guess what? He couldn't do a damn thing about it. His hands were tied the entire time because you have people who feel like they don't want to pay, they don't want students to get away with going to school for free. And I'm like, you know what? Most of these people that went to school for free or want to go to school for free aren't making the kind of money that we were promised that we were going to make. When I looked up what I was supposed to be making with all my education, it was a lot more than I'm currently making. Two, three, four times more than what I thought I would be making. And you increase that with the cost of living, and it should have been a lot more money. But unfortunately, we paid for a lot of useless education, and society feels like, oh, you went to college? Let's punish you for that. And you think to yourself, you know what? We're not living in the movie Idiocracy. It feels like it. It really does feel like it when you look at people at the lowest levels of our society who breed out of control. Because mating is is entertainment. It passes as entertainment for people in the lower classes. Because what else are you going to do? You're already living in absolute total poverty. What's banging it out to have another child? Like the woman I talked to at the gym that works, that manages the gym yesterday. When she started talking about how much weight she gained after her third and fourth child, I was like, you're a single mom, aren't you? And she's like, yes. How did you know? You're working here. Usually you can tell who your single moms are by by being able to determine that they're not working this job. She makes $16 an hour working there. And on $16 an hour, I'm sure that the guy that I don't know how to not sound crude. The guy that gave her the best swimmers of her life isn't exactly Johnny responsibility. I'm sure that he's Johnny who lacks responsibility because he didn't think to take into consideration that she could become pregnant a second, third, fourth, and fifth time. You know who I'm describing here? My own mother. You wonder, you grow up with this poor woman who's been single since she was a teenager. And you wonder, it's like, why do you keep having more children? It's not like your economic situation is going to get better every time you have another child. But these people don't care. Johnny Sixpack isn't about it's not about financial stability. He's about getting it on, right? Every Johnny Sixpack that showed up at my house to put another bun in Susie Rottencrotch's oven wasn't the pillar of education, stability, financial awareness. Most of these guys didn't even have cars. She would have to pick them up. And you wonder, it's like, you need to stop doing this. Unfortunately, Susie Rottencrotch, the modern Susie Rottencrotch, has decided that, she's going to, stop and think about how getting pregnant could ruin her life. But the Susie Rottencrotch that doesn't think about it, like my mom, they just keep going. And as a child, you just kind of wonder. It's like, even at 6 years old, you're like, Mom, are you making a bet? Are you ruining your life by being with Johnny Sixpack for 15 seconds and then getting pregnant yet again? But no, no, a lot of people don't think about these things. And that's why I'm going to segue into my talking points, which are less crude. All right, so from this comment, I took this. So I put this into ChatGPT and it wrote me this. The purpose of housing in its natural state, providing shelter, security, and community, with its modern role as a speculative commodity. So that's what I'm supposed to contrast the speculative commodity with the basic home. When I go back and I look at my old house and I think about what it was when we moved in comparatively to what it became once they introduced low cost housing into the corner on Southern and Mesa Drive, right? It is on the southeast corner. As soon as they put those projects in, the entire community deteriorated. That house, which sold for like $40,000 back in 1990 when my mom bought it. And you're talking about, again, a woman who has no education whatsoever, works a cleaning job, and she still managed to buy a house in the year 1990. Well, if you go back and you look at it now, that house isn't worth anything. Poor people, when they move into these low income areas, they can't afford to maintain their houses. They're barely holding on to a thread when it comes to home ownership. This is, again, completely off topic by why home ownership societies became a thing. Because if you let those people at the bottom into those homes, they're barely able to pay the rent, let alone keep up the house or keep their yards looking nice. Every time I drive by my old house, the first thing you notice is that they cut every plant from the front yard, including the tree. It's just a dirt lot. Why? Because it costs money in order to maintain. The landscaping was perfect in that house when I was growing up. Again, this is the difference between people back then who, even though they weren't making a lot of money, they could still afford to pay their rent, pay for their cars, and maintain their homes. Today's same people making bottom level wages are barely holding on. Most of that people in that neighborhood, I imagine, are just one paycheck away from ending up homeless. But of course, this creates a commodity, right? This even providing homes to the lowest level people in our society is become difficult because I'm sure that house right now, if my mom bought it for $40,000 in 1990, I'm sure it's a $200,000 home, even in that neighborhood, even in the state that it's in, which is absolutely despicable. But when it comes to capitalism, it knows no bounds. You have to sell to people even at the very bottom. I mean, this is why we have 99-cent stores in our society still. Why it's been a staple of American retail for as long as it has. Because even though those people may not have any money, there's still a market for them. They still have to buy things. Everyone still has to drink water and eat something every single day, even if they can't afford it. It's the same thing that can be said about poor people housing, prole mobiles. I mean, prole housing is really what it comes down to. I would consider this to be a prole house. It's Four walls infested with roaches. The whole complex looks depressing as hell. This is where the proles live. Now, if you want to see where the proles are thriving, you just drive 2 miles down the street next to the Tempe Town Lake, and there are $1 million condos there. That's where people are thriving. But here, walk through that parking lot and find me a car that's new. You're not going to find it. And it becomes a necessity to provide these things for the utility of poor people. So let's move on to more of a closer to what I intended to talk about this in this video. Manipulating necessities for profit, housing, rent, and even essential services like healthcare. We're going to talk about healthcare. So currently, I have to spend about $200 per paycheck for my healthcare. Is it the best? No. Do they include everything you need? Not by any stretch of the imagination. People in this country are angry about healthcare because it is being manipulated by financial institutions to gain as much profit as humanly possible. Are the CEOs of healthcare industries responsible for a lot more pain and suffering than you could ever imagine? Those people in charge of those corporations have inflicted more harm on society than every prisoner in America. Because most people who go to jail are committing crimes out of what? Necessity. People don't typically want to end up on the wrong side of the law, but necessity has facilitated the need for becoming a person that needs to become incarcerated, right? The healthcare industry has denied procedures, has denied paying for exams, medication, has denied, I'm willing to bet, billions and billions of dollars worth of necessary healthcare that could have easily been avoided if you just had universal healthcare. But no, we're the only country in the world, the only first world country in the world that can't have universal healthcare because it would be bad for business. That's the only reason why we don't have it. It's bad for business. And if Wall Street can't manipulate necessities, then Wall Street can't be as rich as it is. When would you ever transform something as basic as housing into something that you would trade on the stock market? Houses shouldn't be put into the same category as, where did I put that? As oil or gold. But capitalists treating housing as if it is oil and gold has caused this ridiculous problem in our society, which again has caused many easily repairable things in our society that just aren't being addressed because it's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to talk about the wealth gap between the poorest poor and the richest rich, because again, if you are successful, you are seen as someone that we should cherish, right? We cherish the billionaires. They're so smart, they're so great. Everyone should try to emulate their success. But let's face it, the 99% are not emulating any of the success of rich people. In fact, they're going in the opposite direction. Poor people need things. Poor people need help. They need housing. There's no reason why at my education level, in my income bracket, why I shouldn't have a home. Why I'm still living in a studio apartment 7 years after getting out of university, and I can never, ever hope to escape from this apartment complex if I want to stay in this area. Because many people in my comments talk about, oh, you should just move to a small town where housing is cheaper. What am I going to do for a living in a small town? What am I going to do? Work at Radio Shack? Is that what you people who say things like this in the comment section think? Like every person who lives in a big city should just move to a smaller town for cheaper rent. The reason why people move to big cities is because that's where the jobs are. That's where the money is. And that's why they can charge you whatever they want for housing. There's no reason why a basic apartment should cost nearly $2,000 when basic income for a poor person is $2,000 a month. Now, what does that mean in a society where housing costs as much as you make in a month as a poor person? It means that someone has made the decision to financialize every aspect of your life, from what you can afford to eat, even to who you can be within a relationship. Because as I was watching these videos yesterday, you have these women that have these ridiculous ideas about a man's income, like where it should be. And if your income isn't there, like, what woman would want to be with a man that makes $2,000 a month? Because it means that she would have to make $2,000 a month as well. And guess what? She doesn't want to work. She wants to enjoy your money, but she doesn't want to work. And if she does work, well, then you'd have to worry about, you know what, I'm not going to get into it because I've been in a lot of bad situations when it comes to women. And I know that this channel comes off as very anti woman, which, I try to stay away from these patterns of coming back to that. But unfortunately, it's our society. It's all the flaws in our society. Every flaw in our society has to do with relationships, our relationship with our employment, our relationship with our significant other, or our relationship with neither a significant other or employment. You're talking about the people that just look at this system. It's like, well, what kind of jobs can I get? Well, I don't want to work that job. I don't want to work there. I don't want to make that little money. I don't want to live in that ghetto apartment for everything I make. It's just not going to work. And for all the people out there, all my Gen Zeros listening to me right now, I commend you. I tip my hat off to you that you make that decision. Because what's the point of having a crap relationship with either a significant other, your employment, when you could just live at home and play Call of Duty all day? It may not be the best game in the world, but I assure you, it's 1,000 times better than sitting at a retail job while some sadistic manager comes up and asks you why you're not more motivated to work today, why you're not giving maximum effort for the minimum wage. And if you think I've never heard that in the workplace, think again. It is very common to hear that at bottom level jobs. Maximum effort for minimum wage or minimum pay. Every corporation in America does it, even being aware that nearly every employee you have has tuned out from work because they have better things to think about. Like, what am I going to eat today? How am I going to pay my rent? Why am I scratching myself after being with Susie Rottencrotch last night for just a few minutes? Important questions. Americans have other things to think about besides work. Work isn't a place that we have ever liked. No one that I know of that's not rich has ever wanted to work a day in their life. It's the cost of being alive. And unfortunately, the cost of being alive sucks. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Off on a lot of tangents. I still madly hungover.